Welcome to the RomaPress podcast with John Solano and Andy Mattioli.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the RomaPress podcast. We hope you are doing well. As always, thank you to our wonderful patrons over at Patreon. If you want to join the group chat, get early access to episodes and more, you can go to patreon.com/RomaPress. And like you and I, Andy, the chat is learning, especially this summer, that patience is a virtue. Anything happen exciting to you over the past week? Because nothing happened to the market. We are, at all intents and purposes, in the exact same position as we were last week. I mean, this has been extremely unexciting. I was going to come on here and talk about how I was fascinated, how my uncle from Vicenza, Valentino, he said he is learning English. He thought the perfect time to learn after having interacted with people who do speak English. He thought the age of 65 years old was a perfect time to begin this. He used the word, and I was fascinated by this, y'all. He said YA''LL. And
hey, that's pretty good.
Hearing that out of the mouth of, if anybody knows the Vicentino, like the dialect used in Veneto, I mean, it's fascinating the way I was mystified.
That's very good. That's very good, man. But that's what happens, especially when you deal with people from Ohio. I haven't dealt with people from Ohio.
I couldn't. The wonder that
I know.
I wish somebody would have taken a photograph of my face.
Hey,
I was lost for
words.
I
didn't. I had a similar experience with the English language. I mean, the American language more than the English language. When I went and I found myself, for whatever reason, don't ask me why, in a veteran bar in the middle of Delaware, in a place called Long Neck. I don't know if people know where Long Neck is, but that's in the middle of Delaware. And this 60-something-year-old woman just turned to me, and as soon as she heard that I'm Italian, and she called me Italian, she said,
"That's the best." Yeah.
She referred to me as cutesy patootsy. Now,
whoa,
yeah, imagine somebody hearing that word cutesy patootsy for the first time, and then being
that doesn't
invited.
Translate in Italian, man.
It doesn't translate, and then being invited by that same 60-year-old woman who was the girlfriend of like a military commissioner or something at this veterans bar to dance to Neil Diamond's Sweet Caroline in the middle of a dance floor surrounded by like 100 veterans and police officers just looking at us. Now
there are so many questions that need to be asked of this story.
I know. I'm sorry. That's for another episode.
You say a type of pub you were at, but are we sure it was it wasn't like a swingers?
No, it was a veterans bar. But I knew the guy that was playing in the band. It was St. Patty's Day, and so I was able to get in for free. No membership required, and then I was treated to drinks because I was a cutesy patootsy. So that's my my story.
That has a lot of layers to it. Okay, well, I guess natural transit. I mean, that sounds like something that would happen in like Florida, as we all know.
But that's the beauty. That's the beauty of your country. That's the beauty of the U.S. You have places like called Long Neck. And people don't even know they exist, but they are out there. So if you're in the area, swing by the Veterans Bar in Long Neck.
Sure, yeah. If you are looking to do some wife swapping, it sounds like, yeah. I mean, it sounds like you were on the verge of that.
She's probably there. You ask for Trisha. Yes, Trisha, and Trisha is your gal.
Wow. Okay, well, naturally, the next part has to be Roma transfer market stuff.
Of course.
Oh my gosh, I don't even know how to move on from that. I mean, nothing has happened. this past week, I have not. I have been so unmotivated this past week because there is so little going on. The problem is, Andy, when there truly is nothing going on, there seems to be, by the ambiente Roma, the need to increase the chatter of nonsense, because when things need to be quiet, and I have said this before numerous times on the podcast, when there is an international break, you will see a flurry of stories come out that are nonsensical, that are being put out there by an agent, by a club, for one reason or another, to sort of fill this void, to fill the void of just quiet. We saw some of that this week, but there is nothing. I mean, the most interesting thing that has happened is I have interacted with people around Brian Reynolds, a guy who, how many appearances does he
Eight.
does he have at Roma? 3?
Eight.
Oh,
Eight.
how? I'm trying to think.
In
8?
total. Yeah, 8 in total.
Okay, wow. Okay,
It
so
was on their
8.
official website. Don't think that this came up, and I made my research. This was on their website. So
Okay, so a guy, I'm stunned that it is 8. I thought it was 2 or 3.
came in
8
in the winter of
appearances. I'm
2021. Yeah, February.
I am discussing with his agent, his father. I'm talking about the Belgian tax law, because there is still an issue between he and moving to Westerlo.
But it was made
And,
official, thankfully. So
well, it made official, but this past week, I have learned more about the Belgian tax law than I ever
then it's
cared to know,
necessary. Yeah, yeah.
wanted to know. I mean, I am talking to these guys as to why it took so long. And they're telling me about, well, because he stayed here in this amount of days, he gets taxed at this. And I'm just sitting there glossy eyed saying, hey, I don't care. I just want to know when it is going to be done. And I had a 15-minute discussion
And you still didn't
about
get the answer you wanted.
Belgian tax law. Yeah, because they thought it was done 1 week ago. It was supposed to be done 1 week ago. And then there was just this tax bracket that he would fall into. I couldn't care less.
But
But
that's how it seems like that's how it works this summer. Even this whole Renato Sanches business. It goes from last week was supposed to be the decisive week. Now this week is the week where Roma will meet PSG, because PSG are coming back from Japan, Roma are coming back from Portugal, and so on and so on. And then next thing you know, it's going to be next week is going to be the week where the deal is sealed and an agreement is reached, or maybe not, whatever it is. And then just think about the Scamacca Morata saga, which is endless and is goes from one day Roma having a complete agreement with Scamacca to the next day Inter having made contact with West Ham and being very close to potentially replacing Romelu Lukaku with Scamacca. So once again, we are confronted with the wonderful, and I think I can safely say that this is, most of all, it's Italian media, and it's the way these stories are told. It's a narrative. There is nothing
yes,
happening. Everything is stagnant. So you have to come up with this constant, oh, now Thiago Pinto is flying here, and now if PSG are keen on the loan, now they refuse to let Sanchez leave on loan. Scamacca, he's pushing to leave West Ham, but West Ham are not letting him leave. Constantly, even though maybe the two clubs haven't spoken to each other in weeks, the story still needs to go on. It
right.
never sleeps, right? You have to keep telling the story, and unfortunately, it at least when it comes to football, everybody, I mean, there's just this massive following for this thing, for almost more for the transfer market than for the sport itself. So obviously you are always going to get engagement, so these stories will always thrive. They will always be, I mean, you will have 5 different reports on the same player within the same day, right? So you go through the one day being like, okay, Scamacca is coming to Roma. Then, oh no, Inter are going to land Scamacca. And then, oh no, instead, oh, it's Scamacca is indeed going to Roma. And then back again on the Inter thing. and that is just one way of basically telling people nothing is going on. Everybody is is dealing with this, with very similar issues. It's we're on the verge of August, and the reigning Serie A champions Napoli haven't made a single signing yet. It's Roma are still dealing with the same issues that they were dealing with a month ago, which is finding a midfielder, finding a replacement of Tammy Abraham, and potentially securing the sale of Roger Ibanez, who would guarantee you enough cash for maybe another deal. None of those seem to be happening anytime soon. So that's what we're looking at. That's the and that's and mind you, again, we still have it more exciting than the likes of Napoli, or in the Premier League you have West Ham, who are the only team so far that hasn't made a single signing yet in the Premier League, after having cashed in almost over 100,000, 100,000. Jesus, I wish 100 million for Declan Rice. And so we should consider ourselves lucky that we still get a link to Daichi Kamada, a guy who seems to be asking for over 5 million and nobody wants to satisfy his needs. You have Renato Sanches, who hasn't had a complete season in God knows how long, maybe 2016, 17, something like that.
You are correct.
And who is... I mean, if you think about the Gini Wijnaldum saga of last season, also, it took about, a little over a month, I believe. Wijnaldum, I remember.
Forever, yeah.
I remember I was I was in Italy at that point. It was like beginning of August when Wijnaldum, slowly but surely, PSG accepted once again Roma's proposal of a loan with option to buy, which in the end, I believe that's what, if any agreement is going to take place in the coming days for Renato, that's going to be it. Loan
this thing with obligation to buy. Yeah, no. Same thing with Scamacca.
It's not gonna, that's not going to happen. It's not. It's especially for a player like Sanchez or like last year with Wijnaldum, it's impossible, to predict what's going to happen. Maybe with Scamacca, I could envision that whole obligation to buy in case, you reach Champions League, in case he scores this amount of goals, in case that I can imagine. But for a guy like Renato Sanches, who hardly has made over 20 appearances per season in over the last few years, those conditions would not be favorable, and so that's how it works. I mean, this is the fascinating, like, people think that the transfer market is basically a movie directed by Fabrizio Romano, but that's not how it works. The transfer market is one team saying, no, we want to sell a player, the other team saying, oh, well, do you want to loan him out? No, we want to sell him. Well, maybe we're going to add an option to buy. No, we want to sell him. Please, pretty please. Similar to what Inter are doing with Sommer.
Exactly.
We want a 6 million because that's the release clause for the Swiss goalkeeper. Yes, but would you mind giving him to us for free?
A month and a half they negotiate for this guy. A guy with, again, they want to pay 3 or 4, release clause of 6, and that is on time. I mean, let's be very clear, because one of our patrons, they asked either yesterday or a couple of days ago, I forget when, but they were asking, well, what is going on with Inter for Scamacca? Are they coming in? Are they going to pip Roma for him? What is going to happen? Let's be very clear. The reason, because they feared, they said, is this going to be Fratesi 2.0? And the only reason they got Fratesi, they needed Sassuolo to roll over for them and to make this deal constructed very favorably on in favor of them. Yeah, I mean, they were able to lower the price by including a player. They were able to make it the loan with obligation, and again,
triple the number of installments in which
right, correct.
this fee
And
can be paid in.
loan with obligation is really an accounting trick where the purchasing club, they can either put it on the books for the current year or the following year when the quote unquote obligation kicks in. So it allows them to allows the purchasing club to offset the purchase price by 1 full year. So that's all it is. So Inter would need West Ham to completely roll over for them if they wanted to beat Roma to Scamacca at this moment. So, as you said, this isn't even something necessarily um, relevant to only Serie A. This is happening everywhere except the Premier League. This is how the market is going. I mean, PSG, very, very quiet. I mean, all of their guys are frees. Correct me if I'm wrong, but they got Skriniar on a free. I'm trying to think of some of the other business they've done, and not even PSG, but some of the bigger moves around Europe. I mean, we are not seeing again, outside of the Premier League at least, we are not seeing the dealing, the wheeling, and the dealing that we are so used to. And to be honest with you, I don't mind it. I don't mind it at all. As I said on the previous episode, I actually believe keeping the core, the team, the manager intact in a summer like this, where you have teams changing some things, but they are limited in some of the business they can do. I mean, wouldn't you rather have that consistency within the team? I know I would.
In a way, this is what I mean. This is in a way what people wanted for so many years, right?
Yeah,
When we were
during the days
engaged
of
in player
Sabatini,
trading,
yeah.
when we were engaged in player trading, it was every summer. It was, oh, why can't we have consistency in the squad? And yes, it's a transfer market where nothing happens, but hey, you are getting that consistency. We're gonna get to it later, but even parting ways with somebody like Roger Ibanez seems to not be the club's top priority. Whereas you go back 3-4 years ago, 5 years ago, where we had to really pick and choose where do we get rid of Tony Rudiger or Costas Manolas, and people hated that. But that allowed us to always reinvest that money. Obviously, Monchi came in, that money was reinvested in the wrong ways. Even with Sabatini, some of those deals didn't work out as they should have. But that's how it works, right? You get rid of Brozovic, you're able to go here. You get rid of Onana, you're able to splash some money there. You sell Sandro Tonali, again, you reinvest and you are able to reinvent your attacking department. Or like Roma, you stay put and you follow whatever the settlement agreement entails in terms of spending, which in your case means zero. You have to basically get everybody either on a free transfer or on loan. But by doing so, you maintain that core. You maintain your most important pieces. Dybala, still here. Nemanja Matic, renewed for another year. Brian Cristante, renewed. El Shaarawy, renewed. Lorenzo Pellegrini, Mancini, they're all there. So that's, in a way, that's what we always wanted, right? Like, that's
Right.
the old story of, oh, well, you let Mohamed Salah leave. Oh, you let Alisson Becker leave, Now we're doing the opposite. Now we're trying to hold on to the most important pieces that have allowed us to at least get a taste of European success by winning a trophy and getting to a European final. And that's been in a way, that's been our strength. That's been our strength, because you really get a feeling that the team is building, and the signings of Houssem Aouar and Evan Dika are great, but that's because they don't have to come in and replace somebody. They come in to reinforce. So
Yes.
that's what you can this inactivity, this general boredom allows a team like Roma to keep building on, and if you look at who left that may have had, Gini Wijnaldum left, and then Volpato and Missori. These were like the three guys that were really involved with the team last season. Aside from that, everybody else is dead weight that you were able to offload for the most part. You're still looking at Matias Vigna, who's going to join Sassuolo on loan. Now, recently, Brian Reynolds joined Westerlo. So Gonzalo Villar maybe going back to Spain. And that's it. And so, in a way, this terrible situation, which everybody now seems to be just living with such anger and frustration, is what they always wanted 3 to 4 to 5 years ago, when it seemed like every summer we were reinventing the whole thing. We were adding new pieces and seeing if they match the puzzle, and trying to replace an experienced player with a younger player, and it didn't necessarily work out, and that caused a lot of frustration, and that caused, in a way, that eventually caused us to spiral out of the Champions League. But it seems like now the plan is, to build, to keep building. If it doesn't, if it allowed us to win a Conference League trophy, and if it allows us to reach a Europa League final, then why strip it all down, right? That seems to be the thinking behind the scenes. And honestly, Roma, unfortunately, are not in a position to do otherwise. Some may say, okay, well, you need to scout for younger talent, and I'm sure that's what the club also want to do. But I'm also pretty sure that going into Mourinho's third year at Roma is not the best of times to be like, okay, you know what, we're gonna get all these kids,
exactly.
We're gonna throw them into the mix and see if it sticks.
Or needing a lot of guys
time.
who need time for adaptation. Are you kidding me? I would rather. Why remove pieces from the base that he has built in these 2 years? I mean, well, I'm going to assume, Andy, that if you had your choice between what Roma have done this summer compared to Inter, for instance, fairly certain you would go with Roma, yeah?
Yes. And a lot of people will laugh at me. A lot of people will laugh at me, will laugh at you. They'll say otherwise, and that's fair play, because again, signings in a way are always fun. They're always fun because and I like that people now look back on that Monchi summer. I recently had this conversation in our patron group chat that in 2017, listen, I mean, with Monchi, for those windows with Monchi were always exciting. You're looking at 7-8 signings in one summer, and all in a matter of weeks. Boom, boom, boom. Even Marcano, Ante Choric, Justin Kluivert, all that stuff, Hector Moreno, all those guys. And now we can say in hindsight, well, those were crap signings, so it doesn't count. Well, at that time, you are looking at a different way of working. You were looking
2020.
You were looking at signings that were in part were exciting. There were some unknown players. There was somebody like Ante Choric. Hey, hailed as the new Modric in Croatia. Won a trophy for best upcoming talent in Croatia. Played in the Champions League with Dinamo Zagreb. It was so it didn't work out. But you are still adding 6-7 signings in each summer window, and that seemed impressive on the surface. But did it work out? No. Signings need to be smart. I think that what we've learned is that Roma, over time, were not smart in how they reinvested that money, and that cost them. Eventually, that cost them. It cost them in terms of what UEFA decided to do to them with financial fair play in the settlement agreement. It cost them with them dropping out of Champions League football for a number of consecutive years, and they're still trying to get back into that. So I think that the direction the club went to is wise. Inter obviously are gonna maybe get Samardzic now from Udinese. That's exciting. They got Thuram from Borussia Mönchengladbach. that's very nice and pretty, but it comes at a cost. And we've seen Roma do it in previous years, and it also came at a cost. It came at a cost of sometimes stripping teams that had talent, uh, and doing so too early. You hadn't seen the full potential of somebody like Salah. We thought we'd seen what Salah was capable of, but then he goes on to the Premier League and becomes one of the best football players in the world. And those are obviously always circumstances, because Salah went and met Jurgen Klopp, and Jurgen Klopp did what he had to do with him. But the point is that Roma now are operating on a whole different basis, and people may not like it because it's not fancy, it's not flashy, it doesn't work, it's boring. We're looking at a transfer window where we are negotiating for weeks on end a loan for Renato Sanches, a guy who hasn't seen steady playing time in 5 years. 5-6 years. So that's the mystery of it. That's the mystery of it. It's but I think in the long run, it is what allows you to build, and I think that's the most important part about it right now, because you're looking exactly at going into Mourinho's third season with Roma, and you need to know that after Mourinho's gone, you're still gonna be fine. And you can only do that by laying the foundation, identifying the leaders, securing new contracts for players that you want for them to be here beyond Mourinho's tenure. And that's why you secured Gianluca Mancini, you secured Cristante, you secured El Shaarawy. You're looking to put a lot of pressure on somebody like Pellegrini to keep carrying that armband. And that's what Roma have been doing. They're just trying to build. And honestly, after seeing for so many years Roma deconstruct everything and restart and rethink and reinvent, part of me was tired of that. Signings can be fun, but everything needs to have some sort of logic. So right now I see Roma having problems with spending money, and they can only do so much in terms of free transfers and loans. But what they do in the grand scheme of things makes more sense than just splashing money for the sake of splashing money, which I think a lot of people mistakenly want from the club.
100%, and I will reiterate my position, as I said in the last episode, and I think even the one prior to that. When you have such a summer where there are very few clubs able to spend, they don't have the means to spend, yet they have made a number of changes. Yes, Milan, they have done a lot this summer. They have made several purchases, but those guys are going to play a large role. They are going to need time for adaptation. Inter, they go to the Champions League final. They lose Skriniar. They lose their starting
Edin
goalkeeper.
Dzeko, Andre Onana,
Right. You have Napoli.
Brozovic.
Right, Brozovic. Napoli, they lose their manager. Spalletti, gone. Enter
Kim,
Rudi Garcia.
gone. Kim
Exactly. Gone. So when I see the clubs, the competitors for a top four position, limited in their ability to spend, to reinforce the team, the squad, having the ability to not only maintain the strong base that has been constructed by Jose Mourinho in his first 2 years, but to add to it too with the free signings, potentially adding to Scamacca, Renato Sanches. I would much rather prefer that route as opposed to what the others have done. And I know that is easy to say, being Roma supporters and being involved with the Roma website, the Roma podcast, but I mean that honestly. I mean, if even Milan, yes, they have brought in a lot of guys, Andy, but I just don't know. How do they know that is going to bear fruit? They don't.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, and it's a gamble. It's a fascinating gamble because honestly, what the kind of talent that Milan have invested in is exciting. You if you are able to attract that kind of talent, and those are young players, if it works, great. But it always comes at a cost. It comes at a cost of letting go of easily one of the best young midfielders in the game, Sandro Tonali, a guy that allowed you to win the Scudetto. It so obviously you can, and the equation is always, well, you get rid of one player for 70 million euros, and you bring in 3-4 different ones, and that is great, but it always comes, those are things that always come at a cost, that always take time to to get into the swing of things, and you never know what you're gonna get in return, right? So it's a gamble. And mind you, Roma right now, they're looking at Renato Sanches. That's also a gamble. It's also a gamble. I think is it's a gamble akin to what Roma did last year with Paulo Dybala. And a lot of people knew it back then, that hey, it's a gamble because you're calling him your top player, but guy has struggled mightily with injuries in his final season and a half with Juventus. Was never the same player as he was in previous years. Can you really call him the marquee signing that is gonna lead your team this season? That is gonna be the face of the franchise, basically, right? And it paid off. It paid off. It could have been a disaster, but it paid off. And with Renato Sanches, to a lesser extent, obviously, because here you're looking for temporary deals. You're looking at somebody, again, doesn't have that, in this case, that's the good thing. He doesn't have the pressure to come in and say, replace this player or that player. No, this guy is supposed to come in and offer you depth in the midfield, again, in the Europa League or in the Coppa Italia or whatever, however many games he can offer you, whatever he has to offer you, you'll take it, because it can't be worse than Gini Wijnaldum missing the first half of last season, right? So that's really what it comes down to. And there is always gamble involved in the transfer market, but what we're seeing right now is the teams, and that, I think, with the exception of the Premier League, it speaks to everybody. Like, teams are not willing to take so many risks anymore. There's clearly, like, it's football now is stagnant. Like, there's clearly some kind of mood that prevents teams from taking major risks. I'm not seeing too many risks being taken, and the fact that we can only list Inter or Milan as the so-called big spenders or big risk takers in this window tells you all you need to know. Like, again, Lazio, Atalanta, even again Napoli. These are all teams that we should see how they're active and how they're thriving, and instead it's quiet. Juventus, who are coming off a terrible season, who are going to face a year without European Cup competitions, and they're not moving. Nothing's moving. They can't even sell Zakaria. They can't do anything. They have to get back into this. They're aiming for the Scudetto, and on and on. But that we're not seeing anything from them. So once again, it's a really widespread issue. And with Roma, look at them. Even Roger Ibanez, whom everybody hated, who everybody criticized for the entire duration of last season, goes into the summer transfer window as the big name that Roma are going to sell. We're basically in August, and there is not a single offer
Zero.
for him, and there is no signs that Roma are going to push him out of the club. So what does that mean? It means that Roma do not want to take risks, unnecessary risks.
100%. I couldn't agree more. Let's just end it there. We will be back later this week. We're going to start ramping up the episodes again with the season getting closer. We will go back to 2 episodes per week now. So we will be back either Thursday or Friday later this week. So until then.